I want to talk about Arturo Gatti Sr. and Arturo Gatti Jr. Sr. was a legendary boxer, had an amazing career for parts of it, but was always known as a showman, the show, a fighter. He was going to put on a blood and guts performance for you. There's a legendary documentary called Legendary Nights from HBO, The Tale of Gatti and Ward. It's one of the best documentaries, sports documentaries that I've ever seen. It's an amazing story of 3 fights, a crazy story of one guy giving another guy a shot and them becoming the best of friends type shit. Unfortunately, tonight I want to talk about the demise of Arturo Gatti. And unfortunately, the reason that I am going to talk about the demise of Arturo Gatti is because his 17-year-old son passed away in the same fashion as his father. Question is it under the same alleged or suspected circumstances? I know the young man lost his father very early in his life, and he was 17 years old, and he was boxing. There's another documentary that I always try to tell people about. It's a 48 hours documentary about the tragic unaliving of Arturo Gatti. That's a very hard video to find, and I haven't found it. When I do find it, best believe you will know. But we're going to go with this here. I haven't seen this.
They called me Thunder. They called me a warrior. And in that ring, I never backed down from anyone. I gave the fans everything, every single time. Arturo Gatti was the ultimate warrior. He tasted the canvas countless times, but he always found a way to rise. But the way this incredible fighter's life ended wasn't what you'd expect from someone who went to war with Mickey Ward 3 times and came back for more. The final bell for this legend didn't ring in a packed arena, because sometimes the toughest opponents aren't in the ring. They're the shadows of doubt and unanswered questions that linger long after the fight is over. And the way Arturo Gatti's life ended in a quiet Brazilian resort would leave the boxing world grappling with a mystery far more perplexing than any of his legendary battles. If the truth about what happened that fateful night in Porto de Galinhas wasn't properly investigated, if the full story remained buried beneath speculation and conflicting reports, then a boxing legend's story would end not with glory but with darkness. A champion's legacy, forged in blood and sweat, would be forever tainted by uncertainty. His family would be left in a perpetual state of grief and doubt, denied the closure they desperately deserve. His young son would grow up without knowing what really happened to his father, and the boxing world would lose one of its greatest warriors to an unsolved mystery that stinks of cover-up and corruption. For his fans, who saw in Gatti the embodiment of fighting spirit and never-say-die attitude, justice wasn't just about knowing how he died. It was about honoring the warrior they so admired and ensuring his story wasn't overshadowed by a suspicious and unresolved end. Yes, he beat some of the best fighters of his era. But ask any boxing fan about Arturo Gatti, and they'll talk about the wars, the trilogy with Mickey Ward that left both men forever changed.
If you've seen the movie The Fighter with Mark Wahlberg and Christian Bale got, I believe, an Academy Award for playing Dickie Eklund, which is the brother and coach of Mickey Ward. Mark Wahlberg played Mickey Ward. I'm still waiting and hoping for them to make a movie based on the trilogy of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward.
But here's where the story takes a dark turn. Because for all his strength in the ring, Gatti seemed to struggle with the battles outside of it. His personal life was turbulent, marked by passionate relationships and volatile confrontations. His relationships were rarely smooth, marked by passion and, at times, volatility. In 2006, according to testimony from his former girlfriend Erica Rivera during child custody hearings for his daughter Sophia, Gatti had attempted suicide through an overdose. This documented history of suicidal ideation.
This is from the documentary. This is his daughter Sophia at the Hall of Fame, reading her father's plaque.
Would later become a crucial piece of the puzzle, one that Brazilian authorities would seize upon to support their controversial conclusion. In 2007, while vacationing in Brazil, a chance encounter led him to Amanda Rodrigues, a young Brazilian woman who would become his second wife. She was beautiful, she was young, 23 to his 35, and their romance was a whirlwind, intense and seemingly passionate. They married quickly, had a son together, Arturo Jr., and by all accounts, Gatti was trying to build a new life, a calmer life, away from the chaos that had marked his earlier years. But old patterns die hard. Whispers of trouble soon followed.
It's Arturo Gatti Sr. and Arturo Gatti Jr. right here. Rest in peace. That smile right there has haunted me for years. Since I watched the first documentary about this shit.
Reports of domestic incidents surfaced, casting a shadow over their seemingly idyllic life. There were incidents, police called to homes, arguments that turned physical, the kind of red flags that in hindsight seem like warning signs written in neon. Friends noticed changes in Gatti. Some said he seemed happier, finally at peace. Others worried he was isolated, cut off from his support system, living in a country where he didn't speak the language, dependent on a woman who controlled more and more of his life. And then there was the will. Just 3 weeks before his death, Gatti signed a new will that left his entire estate, estimated between $3.04 and $6 million, to Amanda Rudd.
What? $3.04? Or 3.4 million? Rizzo then quoted Rodriguez telling Gatti, "You're a loser. The only thing you're good at is bleeding. Damn, your mother's a putana, a suciedad, and your sisters are prostis." She got that Brazilian hot mouth, boy. For her part, Rodriguez described Gatti as often wasted on alcohol and rugs. In 2009, she filed a restraining order against him. Rizzo said Gatti complained to him in March 2009 that Rodriguez was pressuring him to change his will. Boom! 3 weeks before his unaliving, Gatti signed a new will that left everything to Rodriguez. The couple then flew to Brazil for what Rodriguez described as their second honeymoon. They were drinking at a bar in the Brazilian resort town of Porto de Gallinas. When Rodriguez said she wanted to go back to the hotel, he didn't want to go home. He didn't want me to go home, she testified. He hit me and I fell. She rushed back to the hotel. She said police later told her that Gatti got into a brawl with people who saw him hit Rodriguez. A version of events confirmed by eyewitnesses who spoke to the CBC's Fifth Estate news program. She described seeing a bleeding Gatti eventually return to the hotel room. The Montreal judge, yes, he was Italian, but he was Canadian. The Montreal judge stopped further questioning about that fateful night. The trial is about Gatti's will. The judge ruled, not his unaliving.
Inherit his mother and his daughter Sophia from a previous relationship.
I tell you what, they didn't smoke him out there in that bar that he was supposedly fighting in after he put hands on her. They didn't smoke him there.
The timing would later fuel his family's darkest suspicions. The move to Brazil represented a significant shift for Gatti, a new environment, a different pace of life. The couple traveled frequently to Amanda's homeland, where Gatti was trying to establish business ventures. He talked about opening a boxing gym, about building a future there. But beneath the surface, the complexities of their relationship continued to unfold. Some close to him wondered if he was running from something rather than running to something, setting the stage for the tragic events to come. July 2009, Arturo and Amanda, along with their infant son, Arturo Jr., traveled to Porto de Galinhas, a picturesque resort town in northeastern Brazil. They were staying at an upscale seaside resort. It was intended to be a second honeymoon, a chance to reconnect away from the pressures of everyday life. It should have been paradise. White sand beaches, warm waters, the perfect escape for a family trying to find their way. Eyewitness accounts from that time paint a picture of a couple that, at times, appeared to be enjoying their time. Beach outings, dining at local establishments. But there were also glimpses of tension, moments where the facade cracked. On the evening of July 10th, the couple went out for dinner and drinks. They were reportedly seen at a local restaurant or bar. Witnesses would later describe seeing them at various establishments, and their accounts would paint a picture of a night that started happy but turned sour. Accounts vary. Some suggest a lively atmosphere, while others hint at underlying friction. Some saw them arguing. Others noticed Amanda appearing intoxicated while Gatti seemed more subdued. There were even claims of a heated argument between them that night. The details vary depending.
You hear that? Some said she was the aggressor, and Gatti was subdued.
The details vary depending on who was telling the story, but everyone agreed on one thing: there was tension between them. They returned to their rented condominium in the early hours of July 11th. Their son was with them. What happened next depends on who you believe, and that's where this story transforms from tragedy to mystery. The official timeline states that in the early hours of July 11th, Amanda Rodriguez alerted authorities, claiming she had found Arturo Gatti dead. According to Amanda, she awoke on the morning to find her husband unresponsive. He was in the stairwell of their two-story vacation rental. A leather strap from her purse, specifically a bloody purse strap, around his neck, the other end tied to the wooden stair column above. Her version of events was that she'd been drunk the night before, that they'd argued, that she'd gone to sleep assuming he would join her later. When he didn't come to bed, she thought he was sleeping it off downstairs. She claimed he may have taken his own life or that an intruder was responsible. The scene that greeted investigators was troubling from the start. The initial police response led to Amanda's immediate arrest. The crime scene revealed Gatti's body on the floor with the purse strap nearby. Gatti's body showed signs of trauma beyond what you'd...
A purse strap. A purse strap. Not a leather belt. Not a double notch belt. Not a single notch belt. A purse strap. Hung a warrior. A motherfucker that fought within an inch of his life every time. If you're going to tell me that Arturo Gatti is going to take his life, I'm going to say he OD'd. Never going to say it was a fucking purse strap in Brazil.
Trauma beyond what you'd expect from a hanging. There was blood on the back of his head, a significant bump that raised immediate questions. His position seemed awkward, almost impossible for a suicide. The height of the alleged hanging point, the strap tied at a height that would have required him to maintain an uncomfortable position to complete the act. The Brazilian authorities quickly...
That ain't him. I don't know what the fuck that is. That's some AI shit. A motherfucker laid over a bunch of peanuts or some shit. I don't know what's happening here.
Quickly focused on the theory that Rodriguez had murdered him. Brazilian police initially arrested Amanda on suspicion of murder. The evidence seemed compelling. Witnesses had seen them fighting. There were signs of a struggle.
Hold on. Look at this strap. A strap is a strap, right? So then how he get the back of his shit busted?
There were signs of a struggle, and her story had inconsistencies. She was held for nearly 3 weeks as investigators tried to piece together what had happened in those early morning hours. But then, in a stunning reversal that shocked Gatti's family and the boxing world, Brazilian authorities announced they were releasing Amanda and closing the case. Their conclusion? Arturo Gatti, the warrior who had never quit in the ring, who had come back from beatings that would have broken lesser men, had taken his own life in a drunken, despondent moment.
You're talking about a dude that was a heavy partier, heavy drinker, heavy fighter. He was gonna go out, you know, till he couldn't go no more. He gonna go home and wrap a purse strap around his neck? Get the fuck out of here. And bust himself in the back of the head?
The official verdict was suicide, but nothing about it made sense to those who knew Gatti best. His family immediately challenged the findings, hiring their own investigators and forensic experts. What they found only deepened the mystery. The blood alcohol content in Gatti's body was 0.29, extremely high, enough to severely impair anyone's motor functions. How could a man that drunk manage to fashion a noose from a purse strap and maintain the awkward position necessary to hang himself from that particular spot? The head injury troubled forensic experts.
Nope.
The Brazilian police said it could have been caused by falling after he hanged himself, but the blood pattern suggested otherwise. Some experts believed it indicated he was struck before death, not after. Then there was the strap itself. It was from Amanda's purse, yes, but witnesses said she'd been carrying that purse all evening. When did it break? How did it end up around Gatti's neck? The knots were complex, not the kind a heavily intoxicated person would likely manage.
So he's lit, he's .2 whatever, and he's making all these knots and shit. Miss me with the bullshit.
More troubling still were the injuries on Gatti's body that seemed consistent with a struggle. Scratches, bruises, marks that suggested he hadn't gone quietly into that dark night. His family's investigator found evidence that hadn't been properly documented by Brazilian police, questions that hadn't been asked, witnesses who hadn't been thoroughly interviewed. But perhaps most damning was what happened after. Amanda Rodriguez, cleared of all charges, quickly moved to collect Gatti's estate. She produced a will that left her everything, a will that Gatti's family claimed was suspicious. She left Brazil with their son and Gatti's fortune, cutting off contact with his family, denying them access to the child, and refusing to answer any more questions about that night. So what really happened to Arturo Gatti? The theories are as numerous as they are troubling. The suicide theory, endorsed by Brazilian authorities, painted a picture of a troubled man who, in a moment of drunken despair after a fight with his wife, took his own life. They pointed to his history of volatile relationships, his struggles with alcohol, the pressures of retirement. But those who knew him best said this wasn't the Gatti they knew. He loved his son, was excited about business ventures, had plans for the future. And the physical evidence just didn't add up. The murder theory, believed by Gatti's family and many independent investigators, suggested Amanda killed him during a domestic dispute and then staged the scene. The head injury, the defensive wounds, the awkward positioning of the body, all pointed to homicide rather than suicide. Some speculated about life insurance policies, about control of his estate, about a relationship that had turned toxic and violent. There were darker theories too. Some wondered if Gatti had gotten involved in something dangerous in Brazil, if his business ventures had put him crosswise with the wrong people. Others questioned whether the rushed investigation and quick closure of the case suggested corruption, a cover-up, powerful people who wanted this story to go away. Private investigators hired by the family found troubling inconsistencies. Witnesses who changed their stories, evidence that disappeared, photos that didn't match the official reports. A Canadian government forensic expert who reviewed the case concluded that the scene was more consistent with homicide than suicide. Arturo Gatti was buried in Montreal, thousands of fans coming to pay their respects to the warrior who had given them so many unforgettable nights. His family continued to fight for justice, for answers, for the truth about what happened in that Brazilian resort. But they were fighting an uphill battle against a foreign legal system, a closed case, and a widow who controlled the narrative and the estate. Amanda Rodrigues inherited Gatti's fortune, that $3.04 to $6 million estate that the new will, signed just 3 weeks before his death, had left entirely to her. She won the subsequent legal battle over the will's validity, despite the family's protests about its suspicious timing and the disinheritance of Gatti's mother and daughter Sophia.
There he is, Arturo Gatti Jr. Rest in peace. Arturo Gatti Sr. Rest in peace.
She soon left Brazil, moved on with her life, eventually remarrying, raising the son Gatti would never see grow up. She stuck to her story, a tragic suicide by a troubled man with a documented history of suicidal thoughts. When pressed, she pointed to the Brazilian investigation that cleared her. She has maintained her innocence throughout. Case closed as far as she was concerned. The boxing world struggled to reconcile the official story with the man they knew. This was Arturo Gatti, who had fought through broken hands and damaged eyes, who had gotten off the canvas when lesser men would have stayed down. Yes, he had struggled with demons. That 2006 overdose attempt proved that. But would this man really have given up in the dark of night, fashioning a noose from a purse strap while his infant son slept nearby, just weeks after signing a new will? His family certainly didn't believe it. Pat Lynch and others continued to push for the case to be reopened, bringing in experts like Dr. Cyril Wecht, compiling evidence, refusing to let the story end with the Brazilian police's hasty conclusion. The Quebec coroner's report had cast serious official doubt on the suicide theory, but it wasn't enough to reopen the case. Years passed and the trail grew cold. Witnesses scattered, evidence degraded. The chance for real justice seemed to slip away like a fighter past his prime. Today, the official cause of death stands as suicide in Brazil. But in the hearts of those who loved him, who knew him, who watched him war in the ring and celebrated his warrior spirit.
All right, rest in peace, Arturo Gatti.
Tough to watch.
What is watching that? What do you feel?
It's just that he's not here no more, you know. He was taken too early in his life. It was so sad. Could be enjoying all this now, you know. Terrible.
I was just in shock. Shock. Couldn't believe it. You know? Still can't believe it. Okay.
You're asking yourself, why? I mean, why? How? I mean, what? You can't even put it in words.
They're showing the images here. The shit is crazy.
His wife Amanda, who he had married a year and a half earlier, was arrested.
He married her a year and a half before his demise.
Reports came out about marital trouble and a change that had been made to Gatti's will, leaving all his assets to his new wife. But
This is narrated by Mark Wahlberg.
3 weeks after he died, the authorities in Brazil ruled the death a suicide, saying Gatti had hanged himself. The wife was released from prison, and she made a statement claiming that her husband had been depressed and abusing drugs.
My thing with her when she came out of prison, you know, you come out of prison for being accused of taking your husband's life. You come out humbly, you get in the car, you go away. She came out, smiles, hands up. Hi. What? Relax.
The ruling didn't sit well with Gatti's inner circle or the Canadian government, which led to more investigations and independent autopsies. But altogether, they were inconclusive, which left the cause of death officially a suicide. Even if to the people who knew Arturo Gatti best, it's still a mystery.
It's really hard because, you know, it happened in a foreign country. It's, you know, there's really not much cooperation down there. They did what they felt was their investigation, and it's kind of closed on their end. And there's so many conflicting stories. No one really knows the truth of what happened. But, you know, I believe in my heart no one knew him better than me in his adult life. I can guarantee you that Arturo Gatti didn't take his life that night in Brazil. He was killed. He was murdered.
I never believe it, that he did that. Took his own life, never. He had a son that he loved to death. He had a daughter, Sophia, that he loved to death. He wouldn't do it. No way. You don't see it.
Seeing the pictures, which were difficult to look at, and he just, you know, he finally looked like this crumpled little guy. But you looked at it and you said, that's not Arturo Gatti, that's somebody else. Because you will always remember him and Mickey Ward standing there in the middle of the ring, hugging each other, and then pow! And that's the way I want to remember him.
So you think a cloud around Gatti Sr., player Gatti Jr., and his ultimate untimely demise? I don't know. We're about to get to that. Let's get it. Arturo Gatti Jr., son of late boxing legend, unalives at 17. Arturo Gatti Jr., the son of late boxing Hall of Famer Arturo Gatti, has unalived at 17. The World Boxing Association confirmed Wednesday. The WBA and the boxing world mourned the passing of Arturo Gatti Jr. His journey was just beginning, yet his spirit will live on. Now reunited with his legendary father among the stars, the organization's statement read, reports of the teenager's unaliving began circulating on social media and were also confirmed by Gatti Sr.'s former bodyguard, Chuck Zito, in a social media post. It's with a heavy heart that I have to say, R.I.P. to 17-year-old Arturo Gatti Jr. Gatti Jr.'s trainer, Mo Latif, also confirmed the news in a post on social media. It's unfortunately not a rumor or a joke. Arturo is gone, Latif wrote in an Instagram story while pleading for privacy during this trying time. The Zone Boxing said it was deeply saddened by the news of Gatti Jr.'s unaliving. Gatti Jr. was found unalived in Mexico, where he lived with his mother and Gatti's widow, Amanda Rodriguez. Additional details of his unaliving were unclear. Gatti Jr. sought to follow in his late father's footsteps as an amateur boxer who hoped to compete in the Olympics before turning pro. He was 10 months old when Gatti Sr., 37, was found unalived under mysterious circumstances in a hotel in Brazil in July 2009. Rodriguez was initially charged with the unaliving after Brazilian authorities ruled his unaliving a homicide. However, the cause of unaliving was later ruled a self-deletion after the coroner's autopsy report was released and the charges against Rodriguez were dropped. WBC President Mauricio Suleiman also acknowledged Gatti Jr.'s unaliving to ESPN's Salvador Rodriguez. The World Boxing Council and the global community of our sport join in prayer for the profound loss of Arturo Gatti Jr. at the age of 17. May God rest his soul and help his family find peace, Suleiman said. When I got the news of his unaliving, I sent it to Oso, and Oso was like, how, Sway, what the fuck? He was strung up like his father. Allegedly, I said that allegedly his mother has that effect on men. It's unfortunate. It's sad. A young man with a legacy that he may have or may have not achieved, but a legacy that he had, handed down from his father, to go through that, it's crazy.
All right, Raheem. So in some terrible news that happened yesterday in the boxing world, Arturo Gatti Jr. at 17 years old, found dead in Mexico. Really hesitated to even want to touch on this because the last thing I'd ever want to do is touch on this and upset the family of Arturo Gatti and Arturo Gatti Jr., particularly his sister and his grandparents. That's the last thing I'd want to do. But I also felt very upset learning about this young man's death. He was the picture of youthful vitality, a very handsome, beautiful kid at 17 years old. And, you can't really look up too much of his amateur record, but he was having amateur bouts. He's been training since he was a kid. And if you look at his clips of training, the kid was nice. The kid definitely inherited some of the stuff that made his dad what his dad was. So conceivably could have become a professional. Looks like that's what he wanted out of life. And you're just left to wonder, he was found hung like Arturo Sr. May God rest Arturo Sr.'s soul. And a very unsettling thought crossed my mind when I initially saw the report of his death before I even saw the cause of death. And I think a lot of people know what that unsettling thought is. If you read the article that I believe first reported the news, the UK Daily Mail, I believe it is, they reiterated that in 2011, Pat Lynch, Arturo's manager, the Irish guy I used to see him walk out with alongside main events back when he was fighting, he had his own private investigation on the death of Arturo. And what the private investigators concluded was that he was murdered, not death by suicide. And the then wife of Arturo Gatti was contained for 18 days in jail in Brazil when the death happened. And there was speculation from Pat Lynch, who did enough to have an investigation that found a different conclusion than was found in Brazil. And so the thought went through my head, if a child is set to inherit a certain amount of money at 18 years old.
God damn. Woo! Shit.
Did someone else want that money? Did foul play happen here? And just the mere thought of that crossing my mind made me very upset. I don't know. What were your takeaways, Raheem?
Unfortunately, in the jaded state that my life has been in the world that I live in, you know what I'm saying? Those be the first thoughts that come to my mind, and then I cancel those out if there's reason to. All right?
First, we do have to give our condolences, our heartfelt just prayers to the Gatti family. I mean, how difficult a moment must this be? Of course, those of us who have followed the career of Arturo Gatti Sr. were just becoming aware of the young man, Arturo Gatti Jr., and then knowing the story from really the ascension of Arturo to his ultimate demise, and then the personal tragedy that accompanied that final moments in his life that are very questionable. Of course, it's easy for us to switch to conspiracy and suspicion and, well, this is awfully odd, to say the least. It's hard to not think about that and then wonder how this is even possible, that this could be true. The first death in the Gatti lineage of Senior was suspicious enough. Like, this is not, I don't believe, and I'm not, an investigator or a detective, so I'm not going to rattle off any stats for you, but I'm just going to say.
And for the record, neither am I.
Culturally.
Hit the like button if you have yet to do so. Salutes.
I don't think these men are the type that hang themselves with purse straps. That was the first thing that occurred to me, even in Arturo Gatti Sr.'s death. Not that it was suicide, not that there was blood coagulation on the ground behind him, not that really It doesn't seem like the way a guy like that would
Radio Raheem is not an investigator, but he investigating. You hear him?
take himself out with his family in the house and all of that. But just that it's a purse strap. Like, it seems silly. It seems trivial. But I know fighters. I know I had the good fortune of meeting that particular fighter. I know culture. That just seems like if you're deciding that this is your last day and you're going to be found either hanging from something or on the floor, one thing that is not going to be your choice is to be found hanging from a purse strap of your wife, right? A young man, 17 years old, suspiciously aged at a time when he's right on the cusp of likely inheriting a great deal of money, or at least power over money that is coming his way. I didn't meet this young man. I don't know him, didn't get to know him, just saw videos, got a sense of who he was through social media.
Maybe, I might add, maybe he was about to inherit something at 18. We don't know. Maybe, or maybe not.
It's hard to believe that at 18, after with a lineage like that there's nothing coming his way as he became an adult, right?
We don't know.
Or at least a
Sean is being responsible journalist. If you guys remember, this is the guy that came at Dana White about the Ali Act, and Dana told him, listen, you want to make an appointment with me, make an appointment with me. But he's being very journalistic right now. He's like, we don't know. We don't know that he was going to get some money. We don't know. But it's ironic.
Claim to something. However, to die in the same fashion is just enough to get us talking. And so, to your point, and I think you made it well, we don't say this to disrespect the memory of or to agitate the survivors of this great tragedy. It's just something that you can't help but think about, and a point that we would be dishonest if we didn't raise, because it is on our minds. I don't know. I don't know whether he's going to inherit money. I don't know whether there was foul play. I don't know whether he was depressed or not, but it all seems awfully damn suspicious. And I am proud of the boxing community that did embrace Arturo Gatti Jr. I didn't have an opportunity, like I said, to get to know him myself. However, because fighters and their lineage really have a hallowed place in our history and in the community, it's important that we look after those who live beyond those great warriors that we know. And as we've just lost Ricky Hatton in the very, very recent future, let's not forget about Campbell Hatton. You know, maybe Arturo Gatti, Jr. was depressed, and maybe this was exactly what they say it was, and maybe it had something to do with him becoming a man, trying to follow in his father's footsteps, and couldn't ever process the death of his father while he was in the house and his mother under suspicion. All those things could absolutely be true. I have no evidence to the contrary. But what I do know is that we as a community really have the responsibility to look after those who are left behind, either by natural causes or tragic deaths, unexpected, untimely deaths of those people that we regard and talk about whether they should be in the Hall of Fame and break down the entire career that they've had and what they've given to the sport. Let's look after the people that they leave behind who really did miss something in their lives in the absence of these people as humans, as fathers, as sons and husbands. It made me think about Campbell. It made me think about, I wonder who's looking out for him, making sure that his spirits are good. And I'd like to have a little report, a little investigation into exactly what happened with Junior. But we just have to be reminded that it's upon all of us to look after each other. And if there is something, that happened here that is just what it appears to be, even that really is kind of like a tragedy and a blight on all of us. So somebody should have been looking after this kid's well-being, mental health, not just assuming because he was on social media doing combinations and seemed to have everything.
Yeah, but understand something. His mother had no reason to mess with anybody that would have that young man's best interest at heart. I have no thought in my mind that Pat Lynch or anybody that had to do, Mickey Ward, or anybody that had to do with his father's camp was involved in guiding him through his career in boxing. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. But, those guys, I believe, would have had his best interest at heart. Shout out Velez, hold the fuck up. That's wild. If you put all that together, coincidental, they both went out the same way. Money involved, or is money involved? Only one person in both their lives that played a major role in both their lives. Man, terrifying to think about, huh? Could be a coinky-dink. Maybe not. Who the fuck knows?
At his fingertips and ready to ascend, that he was okay. Because another thing that isn't common in our sport and in our community is mental health. Attention. It's not thought of as a strong man's thing to go talk to a therapist or to admit that you're having a problem or to share with others that you're struggling. So it could very easily be that both of these men and both of these generations of the Gatti family couldn't communicate that and did something to themselves in lieu of getting mental health care that, could have been available and should have been offered. I don't know. But all we can do really is hope that in the next generation or the next opportunity we get, we look after those who are still with us. So shout out to everybody who's online, pouring out their memories and their heart for the Gatti family and, for the Campbell, sorry, man.
Campbell Hatton.
I know, it's a tough one, Brady. Like the Campbell Hattons of the world and the survivors of, all of these incredible boxing legacies. I myself am going to remind myself that I need to at least check in and look out for and ask about these survivors of these great legacies.
Yeah, yeah, and it was obvious the kid loved his father, even though he didn't even get to he didn't even get to see his dad at 1 or 2 years old. One of the last photos he posted was a photo of him beside his dad, as if he was still alive, and they could take this boxing photo together. And in practical terms, I just think there needs to be an investigation. We can't just assume necessarily that it was suicide. Maybe indeed it was, but it needs to be investigated. And what raises an eyebrow to me is both happened outside of the United States. I don't want to say this when our government does all kinds of fucked up shit and people get killed and it gets covered up all the time in the United States. Right. But maybe it's that much easier to potentially commit a foul play in a Brazil, in a Mexico, where that raises an eyebrow to me. But condolences to the Gatti family. I feel bad when we weren't talking about Arturo Jr. before. I'm sure we would have if he was about to become a professional. I feel bad to their family that now this child that I never met, now here we are speaking about him after. I just want to point out again to the Gatti family, we certainly don't mean to upset anybody. On the contrary, it's more out of love and being upset over what we saw happen that we keep it on, that we're honest and we raise our eyebrows and say, could something foul have happened here? We would like those answers at some point in time. But for now, I'm sure that, obviously they're grieving, and we wish the best to the Gatti family. And also, ask for forgiveness if some of the eyebrows we're raising aren't warranted in this case, and understand why we are raising them.
Yeah, it's worth a look.
Yeah.
Absolutely worth a look. Rest in peace, Arturo Gatti Jr.